When a man from Tottenham was shot dead by the police in August 2011, it set off serious rioting which caused the whole nation to ask serious questions about itself. The conclusion of the jury at his inquest today that he was lawfully killed has infuriated his family. The jury's finding wasn't unanimous, but its decision that the police acted lawfully despite the fact that Duggan had thrown away a gun he was carrying before the police opened fire set off fury in court, which has also been vented on the streets of Tottenham. Zoe Conway is on the ground there now. What's the mood there?
Well, there's certainly anger and real shock here in Tottenham, but actually tonight things are quite calm. I think that's partly to do with the weather. The terrible rain here has driven people inside, but also I think that Mark Duggan's family want things to stay calm. There was a scuffle a couple of hours ago between a journalist and one of the supporters of Mark Duggan's family, and I overheard Mark Duggan's mother saying this really isn't helping, making it clear that she really wanted things to stay calm. So I think tonight at the moment the signs are that that anger is not yet going to boil over.
But there is quite a lot of anger, is there?
Yes, in terms of what people have been saying here, in terms of young people, they've been expressing a lot of anger, but you don't get the sense that they really know what to do with that anger. Parents of children that live locally have also been expressing their fear because of the conclusion of the jury. One of the mothers of one of the children here said to me, "What does this mean for our children's rights now?" They already feel, many of these parents, that their children are already being victimised by the police through things like stop and search. So there's a fear here that this could further undermine their children's rights here locally. So that was expressed. In terms of what the family want to do now, they've been talking about how they want to meet with the Independent Police Complaints Commission. They're calling for a vigorous review of the case and they want to meet with MPs, but they've rejected an invitation by the police to meet. You just get the sense that the family are exhausted and they want to regroup and work out what to do next.
Zoe, thank you. Jim Reed has been following today's developments. His report contains flash photography.
A police assassination or a tragic but justified shooting. Today, by a majority of 8-2, a jury delivered its verdict. Mark Duggan was lawfully killed by armed officers in the summer of 2011. Crucially, they decided the 29-year-old was carrying a gun, but threw it away before he was shot. The reaction was furious. His mother was led out of court in tears. On the streets, her supporters shouted murderers, drowning out a police statement.
No officer steps out at the start of the day to run an operation that results in someone dying. So our sympathy today is with Mark Duggan's family. They have lost a loved one.
Mark Duggan was travelling through Tottenham in a minicab on August the 4th, 2011. Police were convinced he'd picked up a gun and was planning to use it. They performed a hard stop, pulling alongside and drawing their weapons. The jury at the inquest had to decide what happened next. They were asked a series of questions. Did Mark Duggan have the gun with him in the taxi immediately before the stop? By a majority of 10-0, they said yes. How did the gun get to the grass area where it was later found? By 9-1, they said it was thrown by Mark Duggan as he jumped out of the car. When Mr. Duggan received a fatal shot, did he have the gun in his hand? A majority of 8-2 said no, he did not have a gun in his hand. But crucially, was Mark Duggan then lawfully killed by the police? By a majority of 8-2, they said yes.
Well, the jury would have been looking at whether the use of force by the officer was reasonable and proportionate to the threat posed by Duggan. And to decide that, they had to look at whether at the time the police officer shot Duggan, he had an honestly held belief that Duggan was armed. Now, the question of whether he was in fact armed is relevant, but separate to that question. And that's really what the jury was looking at. And that's why we get the slightly unusual verdict of lawful killing when the jury still found that he, on the balance of probabilities, was not armed at the time that he was shot.
We've got nothing to hide, we've done nothing.
The family have always bristled at the suggestion that Mark Duggan was a known gangster or would have been any direct threat to officers that day. Speaking outside court, his aunt said the family will continue to fight for justice.
Majority of people in this country know that Mark was executed. He was executed, and we still believe that. And we're going to fight until we have no breath in our body for justice, for Mark, for his children, and for all of those of the deaths in custody that have had nothing for, nothing. We are not giving up. No justice! No peace!
But despite today's verdict, the inquest itself still raised some tough questions for the authorities. In particular, in the days after the shooting, how did the story come out that Mark Duggan was killed in a firefight with police when it's now clear he never fired a weapon? That accusation helped trigger a protest march to Tottenham police station, which later led to violence. Evidence given in court suggests the police watchdog, the IPCC, mistakenly briefed journalists about a shootout, then discovered it was untrue, but let the story run uncorrected for days.
To put out all this misinformation, to put out this idea that there was a shootout, when they absolutely knew that there wasn't a shootout, to refuse to go to the family home to inform them. These are the only reasons, the sole reasons that we went to Tottenham police station. Had they done the things that they were supposed to have done, we wouldn't have gone to Tottenham police station. Tottenham, there wouldn't have been a riot there. And I would imagine that there wouldn't have been riots in all those other areas of London where there were riots.
Mark Duggan's aunt arrived at Tottenham police station this evening to speak to the media gathered there. It's 888 days since a shooting which triggered the worst riots in a generation, 115 days since the start of this inquest. It will take many more until some of the residents of this part of London will accept today's verdict.
Well, Assistant Commissioner Mark Rowley of the Metropolitan Police is here. You saw him in that report. A police officer has to make a spur-of-the-moment judgment. Do you think it's fair that he subsequently, or she subsequently, has to go through a judicial process of the kind we saw today?
It has to be fair, doesn't it? Police use force, and that has to be scrutinised, and if it's lethal force, then a judicial process has to be right.
Now, that process has determined that at the time he was shot, he wasn't holding a gun.
That process was assessing those split-second decisions you've mentioned. So, in a few moments, split seconds, Mark Duggan leaves the car, the jury have concluded threw the weapon and was shot. They haven't given the detailed gaps in that sequence. They've concluded the speed of those events that what the officer's judgment was reasonable. I think when people look at the Woolwich incident, everyone saw that because of the CCTV. The speed of that was very, very clear. Those sorts of events, officers are making those decisions like that, and 10 ordinary men and women from London have come to the conclusion that it was reasonable.
But the police shot an unarmed man.
The police shot a man who the jury concluded had just picked up a firearm, had a firearm in the car with him, got out the car with a firearm, and the officer reasonably concluded that he needed to fire.
But they did shoot. In the opinion of the jury, they shot an unarmed man.
Unarmed man, Jeremy, suggests that he never had a weapon or any intention of it. He was getting out of the car with a weapon.
It suggests he didn't have a weapon at the time he was shot.
They said he had thrown it just before, clearly.
The jury also concluded that the police did not make the best use of the intelligence available to them. That was overwhelming. It wasn't.
That wasn't exactly what they said. I think one of the things here is we should respect the decision of the 10 men and women on the jury. They said that they wished there had been more intelligence work done in advance that might have changed the course of events. They didn't have any suggestions as to what that could be. I would wish we'd done more intelligence work beforehand that could have changed that picture. I'm not sure what that would have been, though.
Now, you say that you want to talk to the family.
Yes.
What do you want to say to them?
That's between me. I want to meet with them. They're very upset with the police. They're very angry. There's a whole range of obvious reasons for that. And if it would help, I would meet with them. At the moment, they don't want to do that, and I understand that.
But you must have some message that the rest of us can share that you want to convey to them.
Well, it's all well and good expressing condolences on television. I'd rather do that face-to-face, for example, but if they don't want to meet me, that's their decision.
But when you tried to read your statement today and
Yes.
you were shouted down and you were spat at, there's a lot of anger out there.
This is a massively symbolic event, isn't it, when we look back at one in 2011? I don't think that's surprising. But I do think some of your report overstates that. Over the last 2 years, the confidence of Londoners in the police, in the Metropolitan Police, has grown. The proportion is not as bad as you present it in your picture. Of course, there are communities where there are tensions and difficulties. We're keen to improve that. We've done a lot of work on stop and search, for example, in recent years. And one of the messages, I think, for me, is about confidence in how we take on gang crime and gun crime. We run thousands of firearms operations a year, very, very fast shots. Our officers are very professional and very cautious.
But that chant you heard there, no justice, no peace, is rather chilling, isn't it?
It's impossible not to have empathy with a family who've lost a loved one. That is completely understandable. And that's why I want to meet with them. But a jury have looked at the facts and they've concluded this was lawful killing and the police firearms operation was professional.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now with us is Diane Abbott, the MP for Hackney.